It started on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day where the world feels muffled and heavy. The constant drumming of rain against the windows seemed to soften the edges of reality, blurring everything outside into a haze of gray. I had just moved into the old house on the edge of town, a place I'd bought on a whim, a seemingly charming home with history oozing from every creaking floorboard. It wasn't a large house, but it had character. A lot of character. The house had been empty for years before I moved in. I had found it at a bargain price, the previous owner gone without a trace. The neighbors didn't talk much, and when they did, their words were wrapped in caution and curiosity. Too many things happened here, one had whispered. Strange things. No one stays long. But I wasn't superstitious. I didn't care about rumors. I was looking for a new start. The first night, as I lay down in my bed, it all seemed too quiet. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Every little creak of wood, every gust of wind rattling the windows, was amplified in the stillness. It was as though the house itself was alive, watching me. But I chalked it up to being in a new place, to the strange noises that any old house would make. The rain outside helped, creating a rhythmic lullaby that kept me grounded, calm, and tired. The house might have been alive, but so was I, and I soon fell into a deep sleep. But at midnight, the first thing changed. I awoke to an unnatural silence. The rain had stopped. The wind had died down. Everything was eerily still. I opened my eyes, and for the briefest moment, I couldn't move. It wasn't just that I was tired. Something was pressing against my chest, the air thick and heavy, as though the weight of 1,000 unspoken words was in the room with me. I tried to sit up, but my body wouldn't obey. And then I saw it. Shadows. At first, they were small, barely noticeable, nothing more than dark patches against the corners of the ceiling. But the more I looked, the more I could see. They weren't natural shadows, not the kind you would expect from a lamp or a tree outside the window. These shadows moved, shifting across the ceiling, stretching unnaturally, bending and twisting in ways that no shadow should. They seemed to crawl, slow and deliberate, as though they were alive, searching for something. Or perhaps someone. My heart started to race. My breath quickened, but still I couldn't move. My mind screamed at me to run, to flee from the house, from the shadows, but my limbs were paralyzed. I felt the cold breath of something old and ancient creeping across the room, just out of sight. And then something strange happened. The shadows didn't stay on the ceiling. They dropped down, as if they were melting from their place above me, stretching downward, creeping along the walls and then across the floor. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the temperature in the room dropped sharply, making my skin prickle with cold. A whisper, low and barely audible, came from the shadows. "Stay. Stay with us." The voice sounded like it was coming from all around me. It wasn't a voice I recognized, not at first. It was familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place. The shadows on the ceiling seemed to flicker with life, as if they had faces, hollow, empty faces that hovered just beneath the surface of the dark. They stared down at me with hollow eyes, eyes that were full of hunger, full of things that shouldn't be. I could feel my heart beating in my chest, pounding so hard that I thought it would burst. My mouth went dry, my breath shallow. I was trapped. But then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the shadows stopped. They froze in place, suspended in midair, as if they were waiting for something. I finally found the strength to move, to get out of bed. I stumbled, legs weak and unsteady, and I reached for the door. But as I turned the handle, I heard it again, a whisper, this time louder, more distinct. Don't leave. Stay. The air thickened around me, suffocating. My fingers trembled as I reached for the light switch, but when I flicked it, nothing happened. The room remained dark, save for the faint glow of the shifting shadows above. I ran from the room. My heart raced, and my pulse was a frantic drumbeat in my ears. I ran down the hallway, my footsteps echoing, but I couldn't escape the feeling that something was following me, something that wasn't quite human. I made it to the living room, collapsed on the couch, and tried to steady my breathing. But no matter where I looked, I could still see the shadows, moving, crawling along the edges of my vision, always just out of reach, waiting, lurking. And that's when I noticed it. The book. On the old wooden shelf across from me, a dusty, leather-bound book sat, out of place, as if it had just been left there by someone long ago. I had never noticed it before. Without thinking, I grabbed it. The moment my fingers touched the cover, a sharp, biting chill shot through my fingertips, like the book itself was alive. I opened it. The pages were yellowed, brittle, filled with words in a language I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened again, and then I saw it. The last page. The last page had been torn. I stared at the empty space where the last sentence should have been, and then, in the margin, there was something scrawled in dark ink. They never leave. They never forget. A chill ran down my spine. The whispering started again, louder this time, a chorus of voices, the same voices that had been in the shadows. They filled the room, swirling around me like a storm. And as I looked up from the book, the shadows on the ceiling returned. They weren't just shadows anymore. They were shapes, figures, ghostly, skeletal hands reached down from the ceiling, grasping for me. Eyes, empty, soulless eyes, stared down from the walls. Stay, they whispered again, louder this time, as the shadows began to move closer. Stay, forever. I didn't have time to react. The hands reached out, grabbing my wrists, pulling me into the darkness. My body fought against it, but it was no use. The house had already claimed me. I was no longer just a tenant. I was part of the house now, part of the shadows. The darkness swallowed me whole.